Hope that you all get your questions answered, and that we move the concepts forward with the richness that's in the audience. So today's presentation is titled Community Ambassador Model for Promoting Access to Farmers Markets. We're going to have a presentation by Dr. Darcy Freedman, and then also Rachael Sommer, who's a project manager on the FreshLink team. And then we're going to hear from a number of ambassadors that have participated, ambassadors and facilitators that have participated in the program, to give you a little more richness about what this project is like. And I suspect there's some market managers who are in the audience too, so it'll be interesting to hear that broad perspective as well. If this is your first time here, welcome. If this is not your first time here, welcome back. You may have seen sign-in sheets outside. If you didn't sign in, please make sure that you do that. It helps us let you know about upcoming events, not only the seminar series, but other things that you might be interested in. And it also helps us know who's coming and who we're reaching. You also may have seen the schedule that was out there. Next month, we have Bernadette Kerrigan, who's going to talk about first-year Cleveland and initiatives to address infant mortality. So that'll be an interesting presentation next month, same place, same time. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with our presentation. So it sounds like Darcy's going to go first.
Okay, thank you, Sue, and thank you guys for being here today. This is a long time coming to be able to share the results of our first full round of implementation of the FreshLink Ambassador Program. Does it work?
Oh, it actually is. I was pushing next, but it's not going. Okay. You talk and I'll figure it out.
So, So our format today, we are going to hear a little bit from Rachael and I about the rationale for FreshLink. Why do we have the project? How do we develop it? What are the components of the FreshLink Ambassador model? Share with you initial results. So based on the first 13 weeks, which would be through the end of August, we still have the month of September data that we'll add in, so we're not final results. And then turn it over to our three panelists today. And we brought in specifically people who can talk about different experiences or different ways that they've engaged. So we have a farmers market manager, a FreshLink ambassador, and a facilitator of the FreshLink Ambassador intervention. So our the kind of work that you're hearing about today, you guys know, does not happen with a couple of people working in one building, sort of crunching away and figuring out what to do. This is truly a collaborative, community-engaged project. We have an advisory board. Many of these people are here. Is anybody from the advisory board in the room right now? Okay. We have our partners and investigators. Is there anybody who's a partner investigator in the room? You can raise your hand. And then we also have our FreshLink ambassador team. And Rachel's actually going to invite you guys to stand as we announce who is on our team from 2017.
Sure, so if you're in the room, stand up so we can clap and acknowledge your awesomeness. We have Rashida Abdulhaq, who is one of our facilitators, Takora Alexander is an ambassador, Anita Brinza, our ambassador, Marilyn Burns. Stand up as I say your name, our ambassador, Dolores Graceford, our intervention assistant, Carmen Nieves, our ambassador, Paula Payne, Wadeington, who is our Zeta manager, thank you. Johnny Smart, one of our facilitators, Robin Turner is our ambassador, Joe Watts, another ambassador. Thank you, ladies.
We also want want to acknowledge that we have 3 farmers markets that were involved in the project in 2017. And I think I see 2 farmers market managers in the room. So we had representation from the Gateway 105 farmers market. Veronica, do you want to stand up? And from North Union Farmers Market at University Hospital.
Cheryl's in the room. I think she's coming, but she might be able to.
Okay. And then from the Good Earth Farm Stand. We solved all of our problems in terms of food access. But many of us know that's not true. I mean, you could have a grocery store in your neighborhood, but you can't afford it. Whether the prices are too high or you don't have the funding, the financial availability in your pocketbook to buy those foods. Or it could be that the service delivery is poor. You go to the store across the street, you have the money, but the food's rotten. It's expired. It's not the quality that you want. Or you're treated in a way that you don't feel, is respectful. Social access is a little bit more nuanced. This is the idea of how does this food access point fit within your own cultural foodways and practices, your norms and your beliefs. It also brings in things like, the way that people's access is influenced by discriminatory practices or prejudices, so that certain people have more access or less access. Another part in there is the relationships and social networks. How many of you have enjoyed, in the past week, have sat and had a meal with at least one other person? A lot of people. I mean, food and what we eat and how we talk about food and even how we shop is a very social experience. And then lastly, the personal side. If all of these things are met, but I have diabetes, my food environment, my food access is different. Or I have another health issue that limits my ability to make choice in that environment. So when we looked at the Cleveland context using that framework, we see that Cleveland is doing a lot in terms of improving access, particularly around farmers markets, to all of the dimensions in the model except for social. So when we started this project in 2014, there was not a systematic effort focused on improving social access to farmers markets in the greater Cleveland community. It doesn't mean there weren't some things going on, but when we're talking sort of that systematic, across the board, fairly consistent approach. And that became the real target for the FreshLink ambassador model. In our planning stage of the work, we did a survey during year 1 with a little over 300 people who were living in Cleveland or in East Cleveland. They all lived within 1 mile of a farmer's market, so they had that physical or spatial access to a market. They also all were receiving SNAP and had children in the household. So we had a fairly similar population. And we wanted to know among that group, what were some of the factors that influenced their ability to, or their choice to shop at a farmer's market? And so you can see in these findings, we're comparing everybody to people who shopped at a farmer's market 3 or more times in the past year. So it's sort of high-level farmer's market shopper. So compared to that group, we found that those who never went to a farmer's market were 75% less aware that they had a market near their home. Again, everybody lived within 1 mile of a farmer's market. So there's really low awareness, and they were 59% less aware of the Healthy Food Incentive Program. So that idea, the program, we call it here locally produce perks, but the doubling the value of your SNAP at the market to access fruits and vegetables. People who did not go to a farmer's market in the past year, but they had at least some time in their life, also had low awareness of the farmer's market near their home, and they had lower, 55% lower sense of social connectedness to a farmer's market, or this belief that people in my network engage in shopping at farmers markets. It's sort of the thing we do. We also did another planning study where we recruited 30 people who were in the original survey research to learn more about how does a farmer's market fit into people's overall food habit. And in this picture here, this is actually a social network map. It's called a 2-mode network map. 2-mode being we're mapping people is one mode and places is another. And in this particular picture, the squares are places and the circles are people. And if it's colored green, it means that that person or that place had a social connection, meaning I asked somebody, do you know anybody at the convenience store that you go to? In this particular picture, the bigger the square, the more people said they knew somebody at that place. So we can see, for example, a lot of people said that they know people that go to at a convenience store, or they know people at a supermarket, and they know people at a food pantry. Farmers market is here, it's green, meaning somebody, at least one person said they knew somebody there, but you can see its size is actually pretty small. Overall, most people did not know somebody at a farmer's market. And if you look at the farmer's market literature, and even the common discourse about farmers markets, you know, a major driver for using a farmer's market is the sense of social connectedness, a sense of camaraderie, you know, that you might not experience if you're going to the grocery store. And so, you know, we're really interested, is there a way to build that connection to this space that in our city, in the city of Cleveland, we've tried to address food access challenges, physical access challenges, by developing farmers markets in areas often considered to be food deserts or healthy food access gap communities. And so now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rachael, and she's going to tell you about our intervention model, the FreshLink ambassador model.
Yeah. All right, you guys ready for the exciting part? Find out what we did this summer? So I want to start just by talking a little bit about the vision for FreshLink. This is actually a recent development in the project. We identified a need to develop a vision, thinking about, yes, we know what we're doing. We're going out in the community telling people about farmers markets and why they should go there, but overall, what do we aim for? What do we want to accomplish as a project, and as this moves ideally outside of the PRC and across the city and across the country. So we worked with the Office of Professional Development at Case Western to go through a visioning process with our ambassadors, our partners and investigators team, our advisory board, and everybody was able to contribute to what they felt was the vision of FreshLink, and we ended up with what you see here, that FreshLink bridges residents to resources to foster healthy communities. And those are some photos from our process. Oh, cool. So how do we do that? So currently the way we're doing that is to increase farmers market use among people receiving SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, if you're not familiar. Benefits through peer-to-peer outreach to promote awareness of and social connectedness to the market. So like Darcy said, people aren't aware and they're not feeling connected to farmers markets. So you might be asking, how did we choose the markets that we went to this summer? This was the criteria that based our decisions. So we wanted to make sure that we worked with communities that were located in or near census tracts with 30% of more individuals on SNAP. Markets that participated in collecting data in FromTrax software. So FromTrax is a software that Dr. Freedman developed with others to track the number of SNAP transactions and the sales amounts, so that every year we're able to say how many dollars locally and nationally actually are being spent at farmers markets. So it's really helpful in this process. We also wanted to have a diverse group of markets, so markets that were based out of a health center, so you might see sometimes hospitals or FQHCs have markets at their sites, community-based, and farm stand, which is typically a single operator who grows and sells their produce on site. So 4 were invited and 3 selected, and here they are. So up in the top there, you see Jeanette's laughing at her picture. She looks awesome. That's the Good Earth Farm stand on Cleveland's west side in the Cadell neighborhood. On the bottom right is Gateway 105, which you guys met Veronica, who operates that in the Glenville community, just almost less than a mile from here. And the North Union Farmers Market at University Hospitals, which is on the campus of University Hospitals. And we've been joined by Cheryl, raise your hand, who is the market manager for that site. So the 2 east and the 1 west, so a diverse cross-section of markets. So how did we find our lovely ambassadors? You know, obviously Case in the PRC has a lot of networks that we disseminated information about what we were trying to do and who we were trying to reach. So we have a network of community advisors board that's very helpful in connecting us to the community. But we also went out on foot because I believe that's the best way to get to know the community and reach people in the community. And into libraries and food pantries, and I walked up into the street and went into corner stores and talked to people and let them know, hey, like, this is what's going on. Are you passionate about food? Do you want to help your community? Like, and put out the word. So we received 20 applicants, and 14 were invited to interview. 12 actually did interview, and 9 were offered the position and accepted. We did have one individual end their participation in July, so throughout the season we had 8 that completed the season. So a little bit more about what is actually the components of the ambassador intervention. So I'm going to start on the left-hand side of this circle here. You see where it says community connection and presence. I think we can all agree that having a strong connection to the communities you work in is very important. So we looked for people that had some strong connection. They didn't necessarily have to live in the community, although that helps, but maybe they worked there, volunteered there, have family members who live there, worship there. That photo is Kalila, who's not here today. She's one of our ambassadors. She found out about the project from a flyer we put out at the school her children go to. She is a doula for the Birthing Vehicle Communities Initiative and is very passionate about nutrition and how that can help her clients. And so she had that built-in kind of passion and engagement in the community already. All of our ambassadors and facilitators have stories like that, ways that they feel strongly connected and want to help their community and passionate about nutrition access. Moving up to the top there, diffusion of information within networks. So all of our ambassadors had their own existing networks that they reached out to, as well as the places where we would conduct our outreach. So ideally, when you're sharing information, you tell one person, and that person, they get excited, and they tell their networks, they're telling their friends, their family, their neighbors, and that information replicates and multiplies. And next thing you know, we've cast a net very wide than we can even measure, but we're able to see a lot of that through our data that Darcy will talk about in a little bit. Coming down to the right-hand side, build on connections across weak and strong social ties. So as we mentioned, most of our ambassadors had strong connections already in the community, and that was one way that they were initially able to spread about the benefits of farmers markets and produce perks and all these great things associated with utilizing the farmers markets. But then there was the weak social ties, which we had ambassadors going to different outreach sites throughout the summer. So maybe they don't spend their days going to the pantry or to the library or to the rec center, but that is a key point in the community where they can meet other people who have maybe shared experiences or background because they all come from the same community, and information can be shared in that way. And lastly, promoting compatibility and trialability. So we had the ability to provide an incentive to the residents that our ambassadors interacted with and spoke to this summer. Ambassadors were able to disseminate $5 coupons, which provided no risk to the participant in trying out a market. So they could say, hey, here's $5, you don't have to spend anything, just come try it out. If you don't like it, that's okay. If you do, great, I'd be happy to share more with you. So no harm done to the person who utilized that benefit. Our ambassadors also received their own stipends weekly, $2 $5 stipends to try at the markets that were associated with to buy fruits and vegetables. So it's just another opportunity for them to be able to speak more confidently about the quality of the produce, how it's taken care of, how it tastes. You know, everybody can describe something better once they've tried it, right? And I think everybody appreciated that. A little bit about the training. Our ambassadors did go through 6 weeks of training in April and May. There was 2 sessions a week for about 2 hours, and we touched on a variety of topics, and those are the topics you see listed there. So starting at the basics, looking at nutritious food access in Cleveland and the context and the history and how that's been affects our communities, through going through talking about how do you have conversations at the farmers market, how do you work together as a team, inviting people to markets and conducting outreach events. So we really tried to be very comprehensive in our approach to making sure that everybody had everything they needed to be successful this summer. They also had monthly booster sessions, which were a time for the entire group. Since they were working in teams of 3 in neighborhoods, this was a time for everybody to come back together and share lessons learned, maybe some challenges that they were going through, and kind of build up that community sense among the ambassadors. Just wanted to give a couple examples of the content that we provided in our training. So this specific training session 5 was creating conversations about the benefits of farmers markets. So some of what we did was focused on talking about how we would introduce ourselves at the market. How should we have eye contact, or what should our face look like, or what kind of words should we be using? How should we be approaching people? And we actually recorded everybody's introductions at the beginning of the summer to see how comfortable they were feeling describing their role, and then at the end of the season to see had that changed at all, had they grown more comfortable in describing themselves in the role of the ambassador. We also, this was a session where we started talking about what are some things that people might say to you when you're at the market. They might say, I've been there before, the food's terrible, there was a slug in my banana. Well, I guess they don't really have bananas, but, you know, peppers. Or, I can't get there, I don't have transportation. Or, I really don't know what to do with the zucchini. So we role-played a lot during training. So what would you say? How would you handle that? And then we were able to kind of give each other feedback or advice about, that was good, maybe try this approach next time. And I think that was very helpful moving out into the community. We had another session, it was one of our last sessions, team building and getting to know the market managers. We learned from the initial pilot we did of this program that it was really important to get connected with our market managers early. And we had a dinner, we did some guided discussion, just learning more about the communication styles, the workflow of the market managers, ambassadors. But then we also did this team building activity, which everybody loved. Our data manager, Wadey, even was like climbing on the tables, trying to like build the tallest tower. It was really, friendly, competitive, but fun. But they did it within their market group, so it was a chance to see like how do we work together on a project or task, and really start getting a feel for what that would look like and that flow would be. So those are just some examples. Talking about the outreach we did this summer, we kind of categorized the outreach efforts in 4 categories. So there were the one-on-one interactions. So maybe I'm sitting at church and I whisper to my neighbor, hey, have you been to the local farmer's market? It's really good, you should try the peaches. Or, taking the garbage out, talking to your neighbors, those kind of intimate one-on-ones where you have more time to get engaged in conversation, and a lot of that kind of your initial social network. Then community events, so we typically scheduled a month's worth of outreach opportunities for our team. Some of them, examples were given to us by ambassadors, like you really need to go to this pantry or that book club meeting. So there was opportunities to reach out to individuals in that way. We also have a good partnership with our Job and Family Services site. If you're familiar with their function, that's where you would go to sign up for SNAP benefits and other resources in your community. So we had a table there weekly, and there's 3 different sites that serve the 3 different neighborhoods that we work with. So we were able to reach people kind of at that point where maybe they were applying or reapplying. Hey, now you have these benefits. Guess what? You can also get produce perks, go to the local farmer's market, and explain at that point. And then the market day events. So all of our markets have weekly market days. Some have multiple market days, but we were on site weekly. So if you invited somebody earlier in the week, like I know Carmen, for example, talked to a lot of people who were like, I don't speak English as my primary language. Will you be there to help me translate? And she could say confidently, yes, I will be there, and I'd be happy to connect you to Jeanette and show you around the market. So being that welcoming presence. And these are just some photos, because photos are fun and give you a better idea of what we actually did this summer. You'll see kind of a wide variety there. The top left and the bottom right are our ambassadors at JFS, Job and Family Services. There's Miss Marilyn doing a food demo at a local library. Another ambassador, Takora, in the corner there at another library reading books about fruits and vegetables to the kids. We try to keep it flexible so people could really plan what they wanted to do during their outreach. So if they thought, hey, wouldn't it be great if, like, in the top left, they made vision boards about their health and what they wanted to do, and then we did a story time. And then we did food demos, too. So you'll see Robin there peeling some food for the food demos, Joe at a pantry there in the middle, and that Koila down in the middle there with some clients, of course, who came to the market after she invited them. So it was very diverse. We met a lot of people, and there was a lot of touch points and opportunities to reach out to the community and let them know about the benefits of farmers market. And now I'm going to turn it back to Darcy to go over the big review of the data.
So Rachael is the program manager of our project. Rachael came in February of last year when she said she was like out, literally hit the ground running, talking with people and trying to spread the word about the project, and really, tied this whole thing together. It's not easy to implement, as you guys know, programs, and it takes a lot of collaboration. And so, so preliminary results. Again, this is our first 13 weeks. The coupons that were distributed that you saw on that side could be redeemed at a farmer's market up through the end of September. So we have a few more weeks of data to come in that we think will actually be really important to tell the full story of the project. So our 9 ambassadors, we had 9, we did go down to 8, but I'm going to talk about 9 overall here. As they were out doing all the outreach, a main way of interacting with community members was to provide the coupon. So together, how many, and ambassadors or anyone on the project don't say, but how many coupons do you think these 9 ambassadors gave out from June to August? If you know the answer, don't say it. 500. Any other? 250? Okay. Any other guesses? So 500, 250. Well, you guys are way below. These guys were busy. They were out spreading the word to over 1,000 people. And actually, every ambassador was asked to only give one person one coupon. So for the most part, these were non-duplicative. Now, if I was an ambassador and I gave one and you gave one, we may not know that, but for the most part, we think these were non-duplicative. Of those, 135 by the end of August were redeemed. That's a 12% redemption rate. We know more already. We have a lot more that have come in. We're actually thinking it'll be closer to a 15% redemption rate. Now, on the one hand, you say, gosh, $5 coupon, that seems like a really low rate. This program, does this really work? Well, we started to dig in deeper to say, well, what is the normal rate of return of a coupon? We all get those coupons in our mailers all the time. What do you think the rate of return is of those coupons? 9%, 5%, 2%, 1%. It's actually 1% or less is the average return on those coupons. About a third of all the coupons given out are for food. So we're doing substantially better than what a normal coupon would be doing in terms of the return on that. And of course, what Rachael said, our diffusion model is, even though I might give one coupon here, she may have told her whole row of friends. And so Anita may come to the market and she may not have a coupon, but there's no way for us to really know that. But that's sort of our theory of the chain. So we did see variability. That was one of the questions we had. Is this, who's going to give out more or less coupons? We saw some variability. We had FreshLink ambassadors giving out 60 coupons up to 200 is our range. And then in terms of the redemption rate, so some had a return on their coupons at almost 7% and then as high as 15%. We were also interested in looking at, did it matter where we gave out the coupons? So we did the most work in this space. We had the most number of planned events in our community event space. Which one of these do you think had the highest redemption rate? One-on-one community events. So one-on-one had the highest redemption rate. And that makes a lot of sense in some ways. If I'm telling my friend, you should go do that, people trust their friend. They're like, oh, my friend said this, I should really do it. But, this is where it becomes a little bit more complicated. Do we care about this, redemption, or do we care about this? Even though it had a lower redemption rate here in the community events, we reached far more people. And back to the point that Rachael mentioned there between the strong and the weak ties, strong ties are our one-on-ones. Our weak ties are people we may not know that well, but, we reached a lot of people in that space who maybe had not heard about a farmer's market in the past or not been to the farmer's market. And then we were also interested in, we had these coupons, we were focused in targeted communities where there were high SNAP rate, but a key lesson from our pilot year was you can't only focus on people on SNAP if you're trying to improve use of farmers market. Because in a community where there's high SNAP, 30% or higher, out of 3 people, 1's on SNAP and 2 might not be on SNAP. But that doesn't mean they don't know somebody on SNAP or that they might not be on SNAP tomorrow or weren't on SNAP before. And so when we gave out those coupons, you didn't have to be on SNAP to receive the coupon. But we were very interested in getting coupons to these groups, people who receive SNAP and people with children in the household. And you can see about half of our coupons went to that group, which is pretty impressive. And actually, the return was very high among the SNAP population. Far more people who received the coupon, or people who received it were much more likely to go if they were on SNAP. But we see people who have children were much less likely to go. And that's something we need to be thinking about, and we've already started to think about. You know, how do we make sure that families with children are able to take advantage of the opportunity? And we know, anybody that has kids, it's not that easy to figure out how to engage, you know, bring your kids with you, and it becomes complicated in caring for the kids and the food and all of that. So that's an area that we would like to improve in the future. And then our last slide here is focused on, you know, well, what's the impact of this on the market? Actually, this is our main outcome for the overall project. We're very interested in getting more SNAP transactions and more SNAP dollars into the market. We think the long-term sustainability is related to this outcome. And so because we have this common data collection system across the farmers markets in Cleveland, when we recruited markets to take part, we had 3 intervention markets and 6 comparison markets. We were able to do a comparison from their 2016 sales and numbers to their 2017. And in our 3 intervention markets, the change in number of SNAP transactions, there was actually an increase of almost 9% in the number of SNAP transactions at our intervention markets. And there was an almost 25% increase in the number of SNAP dollars. In comparison, the markets that were not receiving the intervention have a decline. And part of this, I want to say, numbers are not final. It takes a little bit of time to get the data into the system. I think these differences are big enough that they may not be this exact, but I'm feeling pretty confident that we're going to see that the intervention sites had an improvement in comparison to similar markets in our community that didn't have the FreshLink ambassador intervention. And we'll have those final numbers again, hopefully by the end of this year, we'll be able to share those results. So, Rachel, do you want to just give an update in terms of where we're going, and then we'll turn it over to our panelists?
So, you might think, okay, the summer's over, what are you doing now? We actually have a lot to do between now and the start of the next market season, but some of the highlights, we are going to finalize our next group of farmers markets. We anticipate we will have 6 farmers markets participate this year. We will also begin doing our ambassador recruitment starting in February. This year, like we said, we started with 9 ambassadors and we ended up having 8 continue through the season. We think we might be doing something closer to 6, but maybe broadening our outreach. Some of the feedback that we got this year, especially being at Job and Family Services, we heard things like, okay, I'm going to this Job and Family Services site, but I don't necessarily live in the neighborhood that you're serving. I'd rather go to this farmer's market. So we're hoping to really broaden our touch, both with markets and where ambassadors are reaching people. By April, we should have hired our ambassadors. In May, we'll start our training, and June will be the outreach. And this year, we're hoping to also integrate some of our training into the actual outreach portion. We've heard feedback that that's something that ambassadors would really also appreciate seeing, getting to like test out what they're learning that day or that week at the market. So we've just wrapped up our exit interviews, and we've learned so much from our facilitators, our market managers, and our ambassadors about how we can improve this and make it more effective for everyone. But by the end of August next year, we will wrap up and we'll have the perfect model, and everybody will love it, and we'll be wildly successful. So look out for that. That's where we're at. So if we could have our panelists come up. Dolores Gray Ford, who is our FreshLink Intervention Assistant and also owner of Brickhouse Wellness. Let's give her a round of applause. Farmers Market Manager, founder of Good Earth Farm Stand. Round of applause. Anita Grimson, who's our FreshLink Ambassador and the Executive Director of Fidel and Freedman.
All right. So should we turn the lights on?
Yeah. We don't need to keep you in the dark.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys, is that
No pressure.
So Rachel and I have some questions for our panelists. And the first question is actually for all three of you. And maybe we can start here and we'll go down. Start with Anita. So the first question is, from your perspective, what value do FreshLink ambassadors bring to the challenge of nutritious food access in Cleveland? And how did you see this play out this summer?
I think it's important for individuals who need a little support to get to the place where they're eating more healthy, to have familiar faces, somebody that kind of looks like them, that they feel comfortable with, at a location that they're being encouraged to go to. And I think for even though the training was very good, I think you have to have a basis. You have to have a grounding in the community to have people feel comfortable with you, that you're not just trying to sell them something, that you're trying to really impact their life, that you care about them, and you really are hoping that they will follow through with some of the things that you've encouraged them to do.
Okay, thank you. Jeanette?
The ambassador value, they brought diversity. They educated the people that they spoke with. It was nice to have someone else around too, because I'm a farm stand. I'm different than a farmer's market. It's just me, not other vendors. So diversity, education, getting the word on the street. A lot of people weren't aware that there was a farm stand there. Oh, it's there. So
Great.
Can you read the question?
I will. All right, so Dolores, from your perspective, what value do FreshLink ambassadors bring to the challenge of nutritious food access in Cleveland? And how did you see this play out this summer?
Okay, what I would say is that it brought communities more together in different areas. Basically, the ambassador, they interacted with everyone, so each group, each community got the sense of what we were doing, and I think that's very important because it shows the community that there's someone out there that is working to help bring nutritious information about foods and the farmer market. So, in my perspective, it basically connected communities, different ties with different communities, and that I thought that was wonderful because if you go to this community, they say, oh, I heard about farmer markets over there, I need to go over there. It was just more of a connection with each community. So I think that's what the value of the ambassadors brought.
Okay, great, thank you.
So my question is for Jeanette.
Okay.
In what ways did participating in the FreshLink Ambassador Program create new experiences at your farm stand? How will we be able to garner support for the FreshLink Ambassador Program from more farmers markets, both in Cleveland and beyond? So two-part question, really.
Repeat the first part.
Yeah,
I was ready
you
to
can do the
answer.
first part, and then we'll go over the second part. In what ways did participating in the FreshLink Ambassador Program create new experiences at your market?
Well, I've never done any kind of food demo or any kind of food thing, so that was really exciting. And Anita and the onions, the smell, drew a lot of people. And like I said, I'm a farm stand, and I've never really worked with anybody else, and it was just, the ladies were great. It increased business.
Awesome.
And it was fun to have them around, and the customers are still asking, where's the lady?
And so Jeanette, just to point out, Jeanette is actually, she usually has 3 days a week that her farm stand operates, and then in the winter, you still keep it open 1 day a week, correct? Because you have the hoop houses. And
Yeah, I'm in the final stretch of my 6 months, 3 days a week.
And the second question was, how will we be able to garner support for the FreshLink Ambassador Program from more farmers markets or farm stands, both in Cleveland and beyond?
What I mentioned in the exit interview, I felt it raised my I know my EBT sales went up. My sales went up, but I would say any markets that are struggling with those kind of sales, with the EBT sales, that might be a positive thing to build it back up.
So we're articulating that to them when we do outreach to them,
Correct.
saying, hey, maybe you'll see our EBT sales grow.
And I think I even mentioned I would talk to any market manager with that question.
All right, we're gonna hold you to that.
Yeah, just do that. Hey, they'd have a coupon, and they would bring it, and I would explain to them how the produce perk worked, and it's different with the farm stand, because if someone has their EBT card, I would only, they had a $10 purchase, only 5 would go on their card, and they would get 5 produce perks dollars free.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, Dolores, what do you believe are the key ingredients to making the FreshLink Ambassador Program work here in Cleveland? Also, what will need to be added to the program to make it work in other communities?
Okay, so 3 key ingredients.
Yeah.
I would say, first of all, you have to have a connectiveness to the community. You have to have some ties to it, to know what's really going on, be aware of what's going on, happening in the community, and that would be one. I would also think a key ingredient is to be open, to be able to communicate with other people, to be personable with them, and basically to receive another person, even if it's someone from a different background, diversity, whatever. I think you need to have some type of connectiveness to that person in some kind of way, and also respect, and be able to respect each person that you're connecting with, because everybody in the community is different. Everyone is not the same, and each community is kind of different. No matter if it is kind of close together, each community is different. So you have to be able to communicate with them, be personable, and show respect, and be open.
Awesome.
And so, what's the second question?
What do you think could be added to the program to make it work for other communities, maybe outside of Cleveland or across the nation?
I would say that basically the same thing, just being able to connect with other people, other groups, and also to bring in, I would say, a lot of community leaders. I think a lot of community leaders should be more aware of what's going on in their community in regards to food access and things of that sort. I think they should be brought in to have training themselves on what the program is about. I think they really need to know a little bit more, because I know most people that I connected with, because I'm all over the community, and when I talk about FreshLink, they're like, what is that? And I would have to give them more information. So I'm thinking that they should be invited to be trained as well, or we could go to meetings where they're at to give them more information, like community council meetings, things like that, because that's the key of connecting the community, is that the community leaders know more of what's going on, so they can also incorporate it and even possibly put it into a model themselves, or have a program set up that way. So that's how I see that on that.
Thank you. Anita, can you describe the feedback you received from potential market customers when you shared about the benefits of farmers markets? What do you believe had the most positive impact on their perceptions and intended use of those farmers markets?
I think I would answer it 2 ways. If we were talking to people off-site, it's a different type of feedback than if we actually got them to come to the farmer's market.
Mm-hmm.
At the farmer's market, when they came, I think as Jeanette said, when they got something that was a product of what Norm and Jeanette had grown, I think they were wide-eyed and couldn't believe that something tasted so good when it didn't have any meat in it, and it was grown there, picked right before we prepared it. So I think even though people came to buy maybe tomatoes, they learned what they could do with the zucchini and the onions and the peppers, and so that's good feedback right there. The feedback when we were out giving coupons was, as was said in the slideshow, that many people had difficulty in transportation. They would like to come and try it, but they might not be able to get there. They didn't know how to cook what they would buy, well, what kind of things are there. And also, I think we as a society have a weird perception of where fresh produce and fruit comes from, because often people would come to the farmer's market in August and say they want strawberries. Well, if they go to Giant Eagle, they're going to get strawberries in August. They're not going to get them at Jeanette's place in August. And so they have to be educated about what their expectation is and to be able to use what's there rather than just come for a certain item.
And was there, building on that, so people expressed some concerns they had or things that were barriers for them. Was there anything that, a strategy or things that you would say or ways that you would encourage them that you thought were effective in positively attracting them to the market despite the barriers?
Well, I think one of the very popular things were the recipes. People were very enthusiastic about the recipes. Carmen was on TV making her fresh pico de gallo. People were intrigued by that. To actually see somebody that knows how to do that rather than it comes in a jar that you buy somewhere. So, am I getting to that? What you were asking about?
You're helping with the self-advocacy.
Yeah, it's really, you have to like people and you have to be able to respond to them and what they're asking you. And so you need kind of a well-rounded. Carmen's cooked for everybody in the United States, I think. So, so you have to be able to respond to people on a level that they're asking about. And you know, it's not our job to try and force them to do something, but encourage them. So if they're coming for the strawberries and we don't have the strawberries, suggest something that they could make in that, use in that recipe that we do have, or suggest something, you know, in another recipe.
Well, Anita mentioned recipes and resources. One of the things that we developed, and actually the person who did much of the development is here today, Jessica Jorsek, our intern, our nutrition intern, helped us to develop a resource library for our ambassadors to use. So we had things like recipes or food demo kits or games that they could play and engage with, you know, residents or children while they're on site. And I think overall I heard those were positive tools that helped us to reach people. So thank you, Jessica, for putting that together. And I just want to point that out.
Can I add something to that question you asked me? When you asked if there's anything that we can add to it, I think also you should add on, well, FreshLink has their own event where you can draw people in that way and have vendors that come in to, like the farmer markets can come in, all the farmer markets that you're looking to incorporate can come in to show what they have as well, and also incorporate other people who do different things, like, you know, a fitness instructor, Zumba, so you know, things of that sort. I mean, I think that would be, when you, I started thinking about it even more after I answered, so I think that's another added piece, is to have like a community event that FreshLink is only putting on and inviting other people to it.
Great. All right, our last question for everybody, and we'll start with Dolores and come back this way for this one. So what kind of impact did the FreshLink Ambassador Program have on you, either personally or on your community or our community?
Well, the impact for me is just reaching out to all the communities, getting to know different people. I'm kind of set in like the Huff, Glenville area, so when I went out to like Jeanette's farmer's market, it was interesting just to see how it operated and what she did, because I have never went out that far within the community. I kind of stayed locally in my area. So it really showed me that even though the communities are different, they're all the same too when it comes to like the nutritional, food sources and things like that. And it also showed me that it's not, every area basically has like food issues with the supermarkets and things of that sort. So I think that's the impact it brought to me, is that everyone needs a farmer market in their community. So it was very interesting to meet different people and just to connect with everyone.
Great, thank you. Jeanette?
On a personal level, when it slowed down finally, I had time to like talk to people. It was great. It was great. Personally, I enjoyed the meeting everybody. Rachael knows me. If everybody was the same, the world would be boring. The more different you are, the better I like you, and I want to get to know you. And also, I believe them being around increased my business. I think it helped with EBT sales. And as community, at my farm stand, there's a social connectedness a little bit, because I try to learn everybody's name. But I felt when they were there was even more of a connectedness, because when you have a tent and something's going on, people want to see what's going on, and people would stop and ask and try the food or talk with the ladies, get seeds. So I felt it was a positive experience, and I'm happy I did it.
All right, Anita?
Well, I've worked in this community for over 40 years, so I know a lot of people. And the farm stand is very much a social center. And Jeanette and Jeanette especially knows so many of the customers by name. They call her and reserve certain things, so when they get there, they still have it. I think it's amazing to know people in a different way than you've known them before. And one of the reasons we wanted to cook was to bring people in off of the sidewalk, because dozens and dozens and dozens of people walk by that farm stand every day and either have blinders on or they look at it and they don't know what it is. And so when you say hello to them and invite them in, some of them are hesitant to do that, but they do, because they want to see what's going on. And it's amazing how many questions they have and what you can learn about them and impart to them. And you'll hopefully see them again, and they'll become regular customers.
Great. We could ask a lot more questions of our panelists, but I know you guys have a lot of questions, and so we're going to stop with our questions and really just open it up to the audience now for anything that you would like to ask. We have a number of other experts in the room, so we may point questions to other people in the audience as well.
So can you tell me how much of the product was actually within the city limits that was sold and offered at the farm stands?
The products that were sold at the markets were grown in the city limits. So maybe our market managers, Veronica and Jeanette and Cheryl, if you guys want to talk about that.
Ours were not necessarily within the city limits. We have a 100-mile radius, but everybody has to be growing what they sell. We go out and certify every farm that comes to our market, and to ensure that they are, so if we go in their off-season, we go and check their seed receipts. So we go and look and make sure that they are growing what they sell. So when you come to the market, you can talk to the person that's growing.
Do you know what the percentage is? Is it mostly outside the city limits, or like?
The city of Cleveland limits? Yeah, most would be outside. Yeah, all of our markets are within Cuyahoga County, but the farms, there's a few, like in Broadview Heights, Hinckley, just outside the county, but there's still, as we try to keep it within that 100 mile. We stretch it a little bit because there's no north radius.
And Veronica, do you want to comment about your market?
Sure. I call my market Ultra urban
Oh,
farm, because most of the vendors are within a 3-mile radius. And the furthest one is, I think he's about 12, and he's just on the other side of the county line. And he also attended the market for 3 years just to kind of get to know the customers and know the kind of things that they would like. So he's very engaged. And the percentage of our food would probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 60, depending on which vendor you speak with, because we purchase and sell to outlining farmers. So that particular farmer that's just outside of the county, he buys produce that he can't grow, and we buy some of his produce so that we increase the variety.
And where are you?
Where are we? We are on East 105th and Ashford.
And Joe?
Yeah, so at our market, the large farmers are from outside the county. So the ones that bring packs of things are from outside the county. The farmers that grow in the city have smaller quantities because they tend to have smaller plots.
And Jeanette's obviously.
Oh, 100%.
100%.
Only one time I sold some Asian Asian pears for somebody, and I ended up throwing most of them away. He came back again this year, and I said, I don't know. And I like to tell people, usually I'm the only person that handles their food, too.
And you kind of have a few specific things that you know your community will like. Do you want to mention those at all? Like, I know you said you tried, like you have the pow-pows and things that maybe the Hispanic community would.
Yeah.
What about those little cucumber things?
Yeah, Mexican sour gherkins and the paper tomatoes, ground cherries, tomatoes. Next year, and advice of Carmen, I'm going to grow more Hispanic vegetables to sell some special peppers and things for the sofrito, my favorite word to say.
Other questions? Yes, Marilyn.
Oh, okay. This is more directed to one of our ambassadors. If you're talking on a one-on-one with someone and you're talking about farmers markets and they don't actually know, and you ask them, well, what is your perception of a farmers market, and they might say something like, well, prime meats. Well, we all know, of course, prime meats is not a farmer's market. So to explain to them the difference, how would you use that approach?
I think for most people, Maryland, they think of farmers markets, if they've never been one, as a flea market, like Jamie's or one of those where people sell all kinds of tchotchke stuff that they, buy from somebody else. And so you have to take some time to help them understand that this is food-based for the most part. I don't know if somebody was selling crafts because I wasn't to the other markets. But for the most part, we have to help them understand that this is food-based and this is what is grown locally. And that doesn't necessarily mean 100% like at the Good Earth, but locally within our region, so it doesn't come from Iowa and it's been in a warehouse for 5 days or 5 weeks.
Carmen?
Yeah. What I love Jeanette's market is we have 5 children. Okay, these 5 children come. I want this type of tomato. I want this type of cucumber, and they're kids, 5, 7, and the 2 girls. The one that win the book. And I'm going to make this. Do you have any recipe? Can you help me how you do this? And then it's awesome. These kids is interested of the produce, the vitamins, and the vegetables. And it's 7 to 10 years old. And they tell you don't cook today. I'm cooking, Mom, and I'm going to cook this. And that was awesome,
I wish more. Those girls, they're sweet. I wish more children. I get a lot of kids that like the vegetable, but I wish more children were like that. I get really excited when kids say they like beets.
Other questions? Yes, Joe.
I had a question about how helpful the community or the ambassadors were toward generating repeat customers. Because I think last year the data showed that there were a lot of people that came to farmers markets once and didn't come back. So I was just curious how they may have helped with that issue.
Well,
Veronica, do you want to, we'll have Veronica and then we can come back.
Okay. I was going to say on the vendor side of that, because there was an increase in customers, the vendor felt more comfortable in bringing more produce and more variety. And so on the flip side of that, that encouraged customers to come because there was more there for them. So it wasn't necessarily because they were invited to come, but once they came, the vendor actually felt more comfortable in having more. That was my observation for this summer.
well, I know that me and the ambassador, which is Marilyn, we were at a community event. And this person, Marilyn was very engaging with the lady and gave her so much information that she ended up coming to the farmer market. And then she saw Marilyn again, and she was talking to her even more about different produce and things that was going on, and she came back. So she was a repeat customer because of the engagement piece, from going to a community event and seeing how we were providing more information about the farmer markets and how they help you, and even gave her information about different things that's going on in the farmer market. So when she came and she got, I don't know how much she purchased that day, but then she ended up coming back again. And she was actually looking for the ambassador to talk even more about things. So I think the engagement piece is what brings them back too. If you have that friendly face and you're interested in talking to them and you want to, and you're on their level about what's going on in the community, they will come back. So I was impressed that this lady came back to even buy even more, simply just from talking to the ambassador.
Great, great.
I think too, as an ambassador too, I think that you have to be inventive. I think one day we were there, and we're at North Union, the best in the location. They have bands there. So I said, what can I do? FreshLink. So I went and I bought this bunch of peaches. So I started handing the peaches out to the band. Oh, you like a peach? Oh, Mr. So I'm like, we're sitting there at our table talking. And all of a sudden you heard the band say, oh, we just want to thank Miss Marilyn, for the face. Yay, FreshLink is in the house. So, you have to be like inventive, come up with different ideas. It's all about imagination. I think a piece, Rachael, was about, we did these posters. So every week, every week we gave each other like an assignment. Okay, you do the monitoring of stuff to put on, to base, but I did the posters. So every week I would do these fabulous posters and stick them up at the market, and they would be so inventive, and then I'd have the customers engage. Well, how many times have you shopped at a farmer's market, or what is your favorite fruit or vegetable at the farmer's market? And I would actually have like little pictures of fruits and vegetables, and they would put their little stickers on there or write a word. So it's all about the engagement and what type of relationship you have with the customer, or what type of relationship you have with the person. And I'm a people person. If I meet you for the first time, it's like I've known you for 20 years. So I can sort of kind of get you involved, and maybe you're like, oh yeah, this lady was at North Union. Let me go back and see if that crazy lady is still there this week. She had me sticking stuff on a poster. It's all about engaging in your imagination to get people to come back.
And in a lot of the literature, and if you've ever been to a market, you know this. I mean, and back to our social connectedness, we do crave that. People, and one of the places people get a positive interaction experience is where they go shopping. And for example, you saw those social network maps, and we would have people tell us that they go to the corner store with they go every day, and when they come in, somebody says, hey baby, how are you? Well, that sense of, belonging and feeling like, somebody's kind of looking out for me here. And that's part of what we're also, trying to develop to some extent with the FreshLink Ambassador Program, that when you come in, you feel welcome. And a lot of people do say that's the major reason for why they go to a farmer's market, that social experience. It's very different than most of the other places we do our shopping. Did you have a question?
I just wanted to answer. That was one of the greatest pleasures I had with the program is seeing the repeat customers, because we would get they would come back even without their coupons and spend their SNAP dollars, and even because the ambassador program ended before our market did, we had another 2 weeks, I think, of market, or maybe possibly 3, and we still had people coming back saying, "Oh, where are they? There were people over here that I was talking to. Where are they?"
Yeah.
So seeing that, so it did happen. I don't know exactly numbers. I can think of probably 5 off the top of my head, but if there were 5, then there were probably 10. So yeah.
Great.
And that happened also a lot at East 105 too,
Yes.
because a lot of we had a community event at the Langston Hughes for Cleveland Clinic, and they all came to the to my class, but they got to meet the FreshLink group too. And I noticed each Friday those same people from that class, they came to Veronica's Market. It's like they were there almost every Friday to because of the engagement piece and just the vendors that were there.
We probably have time for one last question. Does anybody have the last question or thought? Sue?
I had one. I think so this is really great to hear all the details and all the different perspectives, so thank you. But I'm curious about if others in the country are using this kind of a model, or if you could just maybe summarize what's unique and different about this, and then maybe just a comment about where you're headed.
Sure. So I think that and we actually have contacted other people around the country that are beginning to realize the same thing that we realize, that we had this sort of gap in this systematic approach to build that social connectedness. And you hear about a number of outreach models that are being developed. So I would say the one that I've heard the most about is in Washington, D.C. I'm looking at Amanda back there. Don't you think that there's sort of a buzz going around that this is something that needs to be done? I don't think there's a model, this is the gold standard and this is the one that works. And one thing that we've seen across the board is there's very limited evaluation. And so how do you make the case that it's worth the investment? Farmers markets, for those of you that don't know, they're not lucrative industries for the most part. These are really cash-strapped business models that have a social enterprise focus. And so every dollar matters. And a lot of the resources that go to support farmers markets, for example, healthy food incentives, they go to pay for the incentive, but they don't pay for the marketing, or at least not, a robust marketing of that program. And so we're hoping, as a research study, we can contribute some evidence to say what's a potential model, and then what's the effect of that, and what's the potential cost savings of that. And ultimately, we're a prevention research center focused on chronic disease prevention. We know farmers markets have the potential to improve a public health outcome. We know that they offer one of the best medicines for chronic disease prevention. They offer fruits and vegetables at very high quality, and we know that across the board Americans consume really low levels of fruits and vegetables. So the challenge then becomes, how do we get people to go and use that? Because if the resource is in the community but nobody goes, it's really not that beneficial. And so that's the whole focus of our project. And our ultimate goal, assuming that this works, is that we would be able to have the Cleveland developed model become a national model for how other communities can really focus on engaging. And this, in our case, is really looking at SNAP populations to take advantage of these great resources in communities. So that's where we hope to go in the longer term.
Awesome. So that's a great summary and a great note to end on. So I'd really like to especially thank our panelists today. So thank you very much. Thanks to Darcy and presentation.
And we have one thing that we wanted to do before we end today. We have already had an awards ceremony for our ambassadors and our facilitators, but we have not been able to provide the award to our farmers market managers who were fundamental to the program. So we'd ask all afterwards.
So I am Cheryl, Veronica, and Jeanette.
Awesome. And we'll do a picture with you guys at the end. So thank you all for being here.
Sign in. You did, thank you, and we'll see you next month.